Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
I'll just
sure.
give a brief about that, and then you can continue. Dear friends, welcome all of you for the webinar on the budget 2021 impact on the renewable energy. Prime Minister has committed in the UN Climate Action Summit and fixed a target of 175 gigawatt of renewable energy in India by 2022, which has been enhanced to a very ambitious target of 450 gigawatt by 2030. The investment potential visible to the investors was estimated around 450 to 500 billion USD by 2030. On the other side, the investors are experiencing the few challenges to invest in the country because of the policy, regulations, and certainly the 2020 COVID-19 effect. The industry is struggling with issues like clarity in regulatory framework in all the states as well in the central. Long-term fund availability, this uncertain regulations, the poor financial health of the discoms because they are the major buyer of the power, and frequent changes in the state level policies. So with all these in mind, the industry had very big expectation in the Union Budget 2021. Today, let's understand from the industry expert who are his views and analysis with respect to the budget 2021 and the impacts to the industry to meet our climate goal. So I welcome Mr. Parag Sharma. Mr. Parag Sharma is the founder and the CEO of Power, a renewable energy platform set up in November 2019. O2 Power has raised 500 million USD from global investors, EQT and Temasek to develop and execute utility scale renewable energy projects in India, including large scale wind and solar projects. Within the last 10 months, O2 Power has become one of the fastest growing renewable energy companies in India, having bagged 3 solar projects, 2 in Rajasthan, 1 is in Gujarat, with a cumulative capacity of 980 megawatt, and is in the advanced stage of multiple greenfield project bids and acquisitions currently. Before starting O2 Power, Parag was Chief Operating Officer at Renewable, India's leading renewable energy IPP for 8 years. He was instrumental in setting up 5 gigawatt of wind and solar capacity at Renew. Further, Parag has spent significant 10 years in the consulting industry. He was Director Strategic and Commercial Practice in KPMG's Transaction Service Division, specializing in the infrastructure sector. He started his career with the ABB and was part of the commissioning team of India, first IBP GVK in Jagrupadu. Parag has spent about 23 years in the power sector. Parag is an MBA from IIT Delhi, LLB from Delhi University, and electrical engineering from AMU. He is a passionate long distance marathon runner. Oh, great. Parag, I think I'm also a runner and I organize runs in Bangalore. Okay. So that's again keeping a cause of a run for green energy.
Oh, great.
Parag
Parag invited me.
I will invite you for Bangalore next. We have in September.
Oh, okay.
Parag lives in Gurgaon with his family. So with this brief introduction, I pass on to him. Over to Mr. Parag.
No, thanks, Ramesh, and pleasure talking in this forum. To begin with, I believe the core focus of this budget was to incur huge capital expenditure. It's a growth-oriented budget. We all know that India has been talking about having a fiscal deficit of 3 to 4% in the past, but they have taken a different view this time. They're targeting a 6.8% fiscal deficit for the current year. And that really talks about the amount of capital expenditure that this whole budget is really pushing for. So that's on a broader basis. I'm going to talk more about the implication of budget to our sector, which is renewable industry. And if I could say there are largely two areas where it has a huge implication. The first and the foremost is the distribution business. And we all know, whoever has been in the power sector for a substantial period, we all know that the bane of problem for distribution in our sector is distribution business. So it has tried addressing that. It has clearly said that they will be incurring somewhere around 3 lakh crores over a period of 5 years. And this amount would be kept for building the new infrastructure in distribution business, for reduction in losses, improving financial health. So this sounds really good. Now everybody knows the real test is that how it really gets invested and whether it really leads to improvement. In my personal view, the only way to solve the problem in the distribution sector is privatization. We have tried multiple things in the sector in the past, and we all know about it. Uh, but somehow things have really not worked out. It's good to see such a huge number in the budget. We saw in the COVID period, because of the 90,000 crore rupees which were allocated to the discoms, at least generators got paid. And again, with this 3 lakh crore rupees of allocation, we all believe that generators' dues will get cleared faster. But all this is a temporary phenomena. We really have to turn around distribution companies, and whatever is required to turn around, those steps are the ones which are really awaited. Whether it is the Electricity Act reforms, whether it is the tariff policy reforms, all of these have been long awaited items, and the industry is really waiting for action steps. Uh, but yeah, in summary, the figure of 3 lakh crore looks to be a very decent amount, and at least for a temporary basis, for a short term basis, it gives comfort to the people in the sector that they will be paid for their dues. So that's one positive thing which has been done in this sector, in this budget. Now, the second thing where they have tried building some commonsensical approach is this whole issue about incentivizing Make in India. We all were afraid that if a 40% kind of BCD comes on the modules, then the tariff will really increase. So the good part about this budget is that no BCD has been levied on the modules and the cells, and it seems so at least for the next 1 year. This is something which was discussed in yesterday's PM's meeting along with the energy minister also. It seems like there's no plan to levy BCD at least till 1st April 2022. So it gives good cushion to the industry to plan things out. Uh, Look, the people like us are neutral. We are developers. If we are told to buy from Indian module manufacturers, we can buy from the Indian module manufacturers. But the question is that whether the India really has such a quantum of cell manufacturing, if not the module manufacturing. So we all know that hardly we have 1 gigawatt of effective cell manufacturing, while the quantum of bits which are out are to the tune of 10 gigawatt to 15 gigawatt plus, and that to this number is about to increase. So I think government has rightly realized that it is too early to levy the BCDs to the extent of 40% and making the whole tariff increase. And they have very intelligently played in this. They haven't done any change in the BCD for modules and cells, but they have done a change in inverter BCD numbers. And that is where they have increased it from 5% to 20%. It's a very smart move because the inverter domestic industry is at least have reached to a stage where they can cater to the demand in India. Some people might have to compromise in terms of not buying string inverters, maybe only buying central inverters, and but at least the local manufacturing capacity of central inverters and some bit of string inverters together can cater to the 10 gigawatt plus kind of requirement that the industry has. So that's a very smart move. People definitely will start moving to domestic manufacturing, and it's a good indication to the inverter manufacturers also, which are largely Chinese, to start setting up shops in India. If I recall, Sungrow already has local manufacturing, Sinang has local manufacturing. So multiple Chinese inverter manufacturers were already planning for the same, and now they will go more aggressive in terms of expansion in the inverter industry. So overall, these two components, inverters and modules, as we know, contribute to 65 to 70% of the capex. And it's a very good balancing act, delaying BCD on the module side while levying it on the inverter, where there is a domestic industry which is ready to cater to the demand of the industry. Now, obviously, there are challenges for the local solar module manufacturers. They were expecting that the BCD will be levied in this budget. In fact, long back, Energy Minister announced that 40% BCD is being planned, and some of them might have had started investing in their respective modules or cell plants. So it is not a good news for them. I believe what is going to happen is that there is already a 15% safeguard duty levied on modules and cells, which is going to expire by July of this year. So all these local manufacturers will ask for extension of this so-called 14.5% around safeguard duty, so that till in this interim period, which is 1st of August to 31st March 2022, in this interim period, at least there is a 14 to 14.5% safeguard duty, which protects or incentivizes domestic manufacturing. But having said that, it's not that government has really disappointed the domestic manufacturers. Uh, they have opened certain windows for them. The CPSU scheme is a big window, which is only reserved for domestic manufacturers, and the tenders are about to be called by IRIDA under the CPSU scheme. So that will be a good boost for the domestic manufacturing. And secondly, my belief is that somewhere during the year, government may also start implementing ALMM. And when they say ALMM, we all know that it is going to encourage domestic manufacturers only. What needs to be seen is that whether ALMM is implemented only on module manufacturers, or it gets implemented both for module and the cell manufacturers. I don't think India is ready to get it implemented for cell. So most probably government will implement ALMM only for the modules. So which will lead to a lot of Indian companies moving to manufacturing on the module side. We see a good amount of movement in some companies expanding the module and cell capacities in India. The recent one being First Solar, they're talking about a significant expansion. We also hear Renew talking about expansion, or not just an expansion, it will be a first installation for them. We also talk about companies like Vari, Vikram, and multiple other smaller companies, leave about Adani, which where anyhow the expansion is in place. So we hope that this delay of 1 year in the BCD and also a bit of a delay on implementing ALMM will give some window to the domestic manufacturers of modules and cells to commission their plants. And maybe once India has a significant amount of module and cell, then we can do the switch to domestic manufacturing the way we have done it for inverters this year. So overall, that's the way I look at this whole play on BCD, and particularly for the inverter and the module manufacturing industry. Now, other things which are done in the budget, we all know that SECI has become the hub of conducting bids in the industry. Most of the new investors, even companies like us, we prefer bidding only for SECI or maybe some bit of NTPC and SPC projects. We don't prefer bidding in the state projects, considering the financial health of the state utilities. So in this background, the whole industry was looking for financial health of SECI, which is obviously under constraint in the sense that some of the discoms might not be paying to them on time. They are unilaterally clearing a lot of dues, specifically the safeguard duty related reimbursement, GST related reimbursements. They haven't got it from the discoms, but still they are disbursing it to the developers, and that is creating gap in their financial health. And the whole industry was concerned how that gap will be built. Is the 7 paisa per unit margin a good enough number for them to sustain? So in this background, this budget has done one good thing. They have allocated around 1,000 crore rupees to SECI, which will obviously go in building the payment security mechanism kitty for SECI. They have also done almost an equivalent amount of contribution or allocation to IRIDA, 1,500 crore rupees, which obviously will increase the equity base of IRIDA, which will lead to uh, having larger limits for people like us. Once their equity base increases, we may be able to get per project basis more quantum of loan from institutions like IRIDA. And as I just mentioned, IRIDA has recently also been given a new responsibility of conducting CPSU bids. So in that role also, this investment of 1,500 crores will be really helpful for them. I think the other things which are being done, and people say that sometimes if nothing is done is better. And that's what exactly which has happened on the corporate taxes. So there's been no change in the corporate tax, which is a big relief for the industry. There were a lot of rumors going around about COVID tax being levied or some instruments of those kind. But yes, all the benefits which were given in the last year, particularly for the manufacturing industry where the corporate tax rate was reduced, all those continues. So absolutely no change on that front. Uh, One thing which they have also which they have done where industry is impacted is um, there is a there was a customs notification called 1 by 2011. That custom notification has been rescinded or that has been taken back. Under this notification, the custom duty were restricted to 5%. And if you get a CCDC certificate from MNRE, so industry is still protesting that this should continue, but I don't think government will take this back. This obviously means that we have to rely more on the domestic goods. So earlier, if we all recall, in the case of inverter, we used to get the CCDC certificates and used to limit it at 5%. Similar was the case when we were buying steel from outside or structures from outside. The BCD rate was limited to 5%. So this is a bit of a setback for the industry, but I think in the longer run, good for the domestic manufacturers. So this is largely, I'm not getting into small other changes which are being done, but yeah, this is largely the changes which has been done. The other one is that PGCIL has been allocated some, uh, has been uh, has been asked to free up some capital by having InvIT structure, and it will be one of the first examples of a government entity floating an InvIT, and that exercise has already started. A good exercise will lead to saving from the government side in terms of funding the huge infrastructure. So that's a very positive way of really optimizing on the capital side. So that's the summary of what all has been done in the budget for renewable sector. Happy to take any questions, whatever we have.
Yeah, Parag, see, I think you mentioned this now in this budget, 3 lakh crore has been allotted. So, how do you think actually it's going to be deployed, and what do you think about this 3 lakh crore budgeting?
Look, no details have been given and very difficult to predict how it will be deployed. But yeah, the hope in the
Okay.
industry is that uh, the whole transition of converting this distribution company from losses to profitability in over the next 5 years,
Mm.
where government has already announced that all the union territories will be privatized first and then slowly the state levels. So in this transition period, I take it as a grant amount that till the time discoms turn around, this is the 3 lakh crore amount. In this period, let's start privatizing, let's start the attempts to turn it around. The good news is that the Daman and Diu has already come out with the bid. Chandigarh Discom has come out with the bid. I believe one of the Odisha Discoms has already been, the LOA has already been awarded to Tata Power. So multiple steps have already been taken to privatize discoms, and I would just say this is the transit money over the next 5 years, so that the all the people like us who are dependent on payments from discoms, they survive in this period.
Okay. Fine. And one more point you mentioned about the privatization, and also this time they mentioned about bringing out multiple discoms in a similar area. So, what do you say about that, and how does it going to help renewable energy industry by bringing a multiple discoms?
Well, I don't see it as a significant change in the current regulations. If you look at Bombay, Tata's consumer can buy power from from the Adani ones, and so can be the BST or MSCDCL customers. So already in a certain sense, these regulations are there. A customer can is not forced to buy power from the local distribution licensee. He can always buy power from the neighboring one. So I don't think it's a significant change in the scenario. It doesn't make any changes.
Okay. Is it going to improve the quality of the discoms, or is it going to bring down some cost to the consumers, or
Look,
renewable energy getting any benefit out of this?
yeah, I think it is slowly it will lead to a kind of open access market where every consumer is free to buy power from the neighboring ones, and the wires business has to be paid for carrying the power from one point to the other point. And on top of that, nobody can bar a customer to buying power from the neighboring distribution company. So it's a very positive move. It will build pressure on the discoms. But yes, these stipulations are already there in the Act, and it doesn't require any amendments to implement it.
Many of the states now they started coming out of this net metering. So how do you foresee this net metering by removing states? And I think even government of India also released a notification on that. So and then again we don't. So how do you foresee about this net metering removing or coming out with a different scheme for these rooftops?
No, I don't think it's a positive move. As we all know, the whole industry is protesting that why they are moving to gross metering and what was not there in the net metering. So I don't see any logic in the same. It is not a well thought of decision in my view. And net metering definitely should be allowed to promote specifically renewables and the rooftop industry within renewables.
What could be the intention? Because most of the states speak about this removing a net metering, and many of the discoms also this proposing from corresponding states to remove the net metering. What could be the reason, and
I think
how?
Yeah, I think the reason is that the discoms have to improve their distribution network to a large extent if the net metering has to be really implemented. The load in the distribution transformers, the whole distribution system, I think it was not equipped to handle net metering. And rather than strengthening that network, they are going with the shortcut approach of just blocking it.
Mm. So do you think in case if they remove net metering, this rooftop industry is going to achieve this the goal what we have kept in the national mission for the rooftop?
We all know that we are nowhere close to just 175 gigawatt, and within the rooftop, the gap is the biggest. We are nowhere close to reaching 40 gigawatts. And the reason is all this whole regulatory uncertainty, uh, and only the targets have been defined, but no implementation support has been given to the rooftop industry to achieve the same. So it's a matter of fact that India is nowhere close to 175 gigawatt. India will hardly do 120, 130 gigawatt in this time period.
Coming to even open access, we also see the same sort of situations. Many of the states are now they're withdrawing the banking facility, and they are adding extra charges, cross subsidy, and all those things. They want to introduce back to renewable energy sectors, which was exempted for so many years. In fact, if you know the Karnataka, I think earlier to up to 2018 March, everything was exempted. I think many of the people were keen to come and invest in Karnataka. Now they're removed. So what do you say about this open access market is going to be?
Yeah, no, that's a very important, relevant question. So, in fact, there is a recent order of appellate tribunal, which was more in the context of what happened in Tamil Nadu. And they clearly mention that banking is compulsory or is required by the renewable industry. You can't withdraw banking. And I think in this background, even in Karnataka, the current uh, discussions which are happening with the regulator on the new regulation is getting delayed, because obviously the regulator is also trying to analyze this recent APTEL order. So, but I completely also agree with the DISCOM's point of view that we can't have an annual banking as it has been historically provided, but it can't go down to a very restrictive 15-minute kind of banking, which is there in Gujarat. So both are extreme ends, and there has to be a intermediary solution to this whole problem. Uh, I think what the whole industry is asking for, both the discoms who want, both the consumers who want to buy power through open access and the generators, that you please take you please charge for wheeling power, you please charge for the banking of power. It's not that we want these services free of cost. We don't need any concessions per se. So you please charge this amount and then let us do this transaction, because it's not that we want to do these transactions which will lead to saving in the consumer's bill. It is just that there are a lot of customers who are looking for buying green power, even if it is slightly costlier. So considering that modus operandi, all these things should be allowed, though they may be charged slightly higher than what is currently being charged. I think Ramesh, there's a bit of a signal problem, I believe.
But wherever we see the regulatory decisions, it is more or less actually favorable to the. Can you hear?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay. I think the state regulations, recent many of the states, we see that it's more and more discoms where they discourage where they the scheme itself. Do you think actually the investors actually feel comfort in the current country to invest now?
Yeah, so look, you are absolutely right. All the orders of local regulators, or specifically in Karnataka, are favoring discoms rather than the customers. Uh, and it's becoming difficult to do open access. Leave about Karnataka, in fact, across India. We have seen what happened in Haryana. People had almost commissioned their plant, and now the order from the HERC is that sell the power to the discoms rather than to the consumer. We have seen in Karnataka that once regulator starts filtering things, they attack the group captive structure. They ask so many questions on the group captive structure, uh, and so these uh, problems. Considering all these problems, I think we are very careful in doing any investment in open access. I think not only we but the whole industry per se. It seems like group captive word is becoming slightly dangerous. If you have to do a transaction, just do transaction with one single customer in a captive single captive model. Because moment it is group captive, you have to show on papers this whole allotment of 26% equity among the two customers or multiple customers in the ratio of equity invested by each one of them. And this exercise, sometimes regulator is saying, has to be proven on every day basis or every 15-minute basis that you have followed this pro rata allocation of energy in the ratio of equity invested. So I believe anybody who is doing open access in India currently is first of all avoiding third-party open access. They are restricting themselves in the captive mode. Within the captive mode, they are avoiding more number of customers in one single SPV. They want to make it very clear that the allocation of equity and the allocation of power in the ratio of equity, all those questions should not be asked by either the discoms or the regulator to really play safe in that zone. They are also making it sure that let's be ready with the new regime where banking will be lesser available as compared to the previous regime. So you might have to, earlier you might be replacing 70% of the customer's power, but maybe as per the new banking regulation, you will be able to replace only 50%. So let's be prepared for that because that's the direction in which most of the regulators in India are going on. But having said, my personal belief is that there is a limit up to which discoms or the regulators can stop open access. Soon, there will be a clarity available on doing virtual PPAs. If this whole draft paper on derivatives, which I believe is already out by SEBI for comments, if this draft paper gets implemented, we can do contract for differences. We can just sell power in the exchange and discoms, and we can sign a separate agreement with the customer for contract for differences and sell the renewable components to them. So directionally, I believe it's a matter of maybe next 6 months, 7 months, once the derivatives are allowed, the open access will become more and more prevalent in India. In fact, a lot of new platforms which are getting developed in renewable sector in India are looking at open access very seriously in India. And it's a push not only from generator side, it is a push from the customer side also. You talk to Amazon, you talk to Facebook, you talk to a lot of customers like these who are so-called RE100 customers. They are gungo about only buying power through renewables, whatever it might be. So they are with us in terms of policy advocacy at the national level and also at the state level. And recently there was a attempt made by MNRE also. They organized a lot of small sessions in which both the generators and the customers were there, and they were trying to solve these problems, and hopefully something will come out of it. So in general, we are very hopeful that directionally open access will become more and more implementable. But right now, one has to be very careful.
Now we have one question from Dinesh. He's I think he's asking same question about the brass metering. for the solar rooftop. Is it a legal what they are trying to enforce from the government of India, which recent notification? And as per the Electricity Act, actually it's a right to generate our own power and consume it. So they when they bring grass metering, that that class, I think that where we want to generate our own power and consumption cannot be done. So he's asking about the question: is it a right? And as per the Electricity Act, it can be done.
I will excuse myself. I'm not an expert on having this legal view, and specifically, our company is not into rooftop segment, so I have not been really following it to the teeth. So I'm not the right person to answer this.
Okay, thank you. I think Dinesh, I think to answer this, what I have inquired, it is a right to, as per the Electricity Act, we have a right to generate, and they can't enforce only grass metering, and we have a right to generate and consume, and we should, if they're trying to remove net metering, they have to come out with some other scheme where we can generate and consume it. So this is what I understand. I also discussed with MNRE. I think what you're asking is correct. We have a right to generate. That's answer to this. And Parag, I think overall, if you see that, so this budget, if you see this year budget, and of course last year, it was actually more spoke about related to renewable energy and climate. And do you think actually we'll be able to achieve the climate goals what we are committed from our Prime Minister? By 2022, we want to achieve something, and again they've announced it. Do you think actually we'll be with this speed we'll be able to achieve it?
But I don't think so. As I said, 175 gigawatt by 2022, we all know that we are missing that number. We are nowhere going to be close to that. Now the second target is achieving, I believe, 450 gigawatt or so by end of this decade. That also, if we see the current way the things are moving, it doesn't seem to be going in the right direction. So it's not that government is not doing anything. So even in the COVID season, they came out with the 10 to 15 gigawatt of bids. But then the challenge is that right now we are sitting at almost 18 gigawatt of unsigned PPAs. So once the number of bids increases, we don't have any distribution licenses to really consume that much of power. And in fact, now the industry is asking that please don't come out with the more bids. First, you sell this 18 gigawatt and then come out with the new bids. It's a very odd market where 2 rupees would have been a good news for the industry, but it has become a very bad news. All the bids which were conducted 1 year back or 1.5 years back, which were at a higher tariff, now because of the 2 rupees bid, it's becoming very difficult to sell that power. So it has become a transitionary phase, and we should make sure that whenever the bids are conducted, power should be sold or PSA should be signed within 2-3 months from there. Otherwise, once you end up waiting for 8-9 months, and our is an industry where tariffs will keep falling, so it becomes very difficult to sell power at those differential numbers. So that's one challenge. The second challenge that we are facing is this whole uncertainty about some odd behaviors. We earlier thought that Andhra is the only one who reneges from contract. Recently, we have seen a similar behavior from Gujarat. They, after giving the LOA, making people wait for 7 months, they having themselves filed a petition for adoption of tariff. And in the 7th month, they say that no, we want to withdraw our tariff petition. So it's this uncertainty, and look, we are talking about losing customers or losing the confidence of the investors in lieu of saving some 1 paisa, 2 paisa. So which has become a very, very odd behavior on behalf of certain discoms. We are also facing challenges like if we are sitting today, we don't know what will happen to ALMM. We don't know when we will be asked to move to domestic industry, whether at that time, whether there will be really so much of modules and cells available in the domestic industry. So on one hand, you have so much of urge to reduce tariff, you have so much of urge to increase the capacity, but on the other hand, you are also trying to push domestic manufacturing, and all these things really can't go hand in gloves. So that's another challenge. So in nutshell, what has happened is that if in the country 15 gigawatt of bids, let's say, were conducted last year or between now and last 12 months, there would have been hardly any on-ground implementation of these capacities. The reason is very simple. Either they have not been converted into PPAs, only LOAs have been given. Even if some places the PPAs are given, they are waiting for the evacuation infrastructure. Everybody is bidding, considering they will be setting up the plant in the best radiation area, which is Fatehgarh. And in Fatehgarh, the Fatehgarh 3 substation, which was supposed to be ordered almost a year back, is getting ordered now. The next expansion capacity, which is Fatehgarh 4, where even the Northern Power Committee has not approved this substation. And typically we have seen it takes at least 2 years from the day a committee will approve. So we believe it's not just the PPAs not getting signed is an issue. Then the evacuation is a big issue. On one hand, government has promised that there will be no CTU charges for projects commissioned till June 23, but discoms are really pushing hard in terms of developing the infrastructure. So it's becoming a curse to the sector that because of this waiver, there's hardly any new network which is getting planned. So, and despite repeated efforts and just because there are two ministries involved, MOP who looks at this, and while the MNRE who is pushing for renewables, MOP believes that till the time LTOs are applied, we will not invest money in the evacuation system, and LTOs can't be applied till the time you have a PPA signed. So you solve the evacuation problem first, you solve the PPA problem first, then you have to solve the evacuation problem, and then the people will start investing. And then comes the third problem, which is adoption of tariff. So we have seen now the clauses built in the PPAs are that your condition precedent is to get the tariff adopted both from the CRC and also from the state regulatory commissions. So my investor or my lender doesn't allow me to invest till both the events happen. Now we all know what is happening to CRC. It is closed from last 4 months. We know what is happening in the Jharkhand Electricity Regulatory Commission. Almost people have taken risk. They have invested. Plant is almost getting ready, and Jharkhand Electricity Regulatory Commission has still not adopted the tariff. So after seeing all these precedents, people are saying, I will not invest till the time both the regulators adopt my tariff. So a lot of bids have been conducted, but because of these 3 or 4 problems, PPA not being signed, evacuation not being ready, tariffs not getting adopted, the odd orders of regulatory commissions as it has happened in Dholera recently in Gujarat. So all that has become a big deterrent for really investing the money. It's not that investors are not ready. They all are bidding aggressively. They are all hopeful that these problems will be resolved. But if it really doesn't get resolved soon, then industry will again be back to square one and nothing much will move.
So in this budget, they also spoke about hydrogen mission. So many people now they mentioned that now the target they're going to shift it to hydrogen mission, and they're going to achieve decarbonized power through hydrogen plus this also renewable energy. Probably the focus will come down towards solar PV technology. Was some of the comments which has been passed. What do you say about that?
Ramesh, we are right now struggling to really cope up with storage first, because that seems to be more near to the commercial figures. And now we are talking about one thing more, which seems to be slightly more far-fetched. It may take more time to really reach to a commercial numbers. So as far as O2 is concerned, we are not there. We are just focusing only on solar, wind, and storage rather than focusing on the fourth thing, which is slightly more long term.
So now, so as per you there now, if you see that the budget plan is not may not be able to meet the climate goals what it's been mentioned. So what you want to suggest, if at all you want to be suggest to the government for next budget, or we maybe want to give opinion for the budget now? What are some of the bullet points which you can say that? So these are the things which we required immediately for the industry to grow fast. So can you just
So
briefly?
it has nothing to do with budget per se, but yes, as I said, we need to follow a process which used to be followed for bidding out conventional power plants. And the process there was that the whole quantum of procurement, the whole tariff approvals, the whole bidding process approvals, bid documents approval were taken beforehand, before conducting a bid. And that's why there was no uncertainty once you have put in the bid. So that is one move which is very urgently required, because the bidding process has become a kind of mockery now. The second thing which is required is to invest in transmission infrastructure upfront. You can't wait for the LTOs to be applied and then you will build the transmission infrastructure, because we all know that 1.5 years is given to build solar or a wind plant, while the transmission infrastructure can't be built at the same pace. So second step is that you have to do a similar schemes like Green Corridor, which was earlier launched and developed pretty well. So that has completely stopped over the last 2, 3 years. So the whole upfront investment in the transmission infrastructure is the second thing which is required. The third and the fourth most thing, which is the basis, is the distribution licensees health. Though there is something being done in the budget, but we need to privatize discoms. I believe that's the only solution to it, and do it faster. Let's not do it in the steps of first doing union territories and then doing states. I think we have to roll out the privatization as soon as possible. Otherwise, SECI or NTPC or NHPC can't really take on to them. So much of capacity is bid out without any comfort of being paid on the other side.
But
So
privatization is not spoke in the budget. They only spoke about multiple discoms. That is entirely different, and the privatization is entirely different. I think.
no, I'm just giving my views. I'm not saying that it is mentioned in the budget. I'm just saying this is my views on what needs to be done.
So any other things?
Um, Largely these ones, and I believe the smaller things, like they're talking about RPO to be more aggressively, more
Enforcing.
enforcing and slightly increase the RPOs as compared to the current ones. The whole integration of renewables with the rest of the grid by making this intraday market more effective. That is the real need of the day today. We need to launch this market more aggressively as compared to the way it is currently being launched. We need to have ancillary services being contracted over the long period. So the whole point about when we started the conversation today, that is this whole RTC bid the right way to balance the grid or make renewables firm? I would say no, because once you have an ancillary market, you need short-term storage capacities. They should contract for these short-term storage capacities. That will lead to a more better integration at a lesser tariff for a grid like India. So that is something where regulator has really not been very active over the last 4, 5 months. Nothing is getting done on that front. So ancillary services market needs to be made more effective. So that's the other thing that I can suggest. The fifth thing, which is already under implementation, where there is a common guidelines for tariff-based competitive bidding, which is a really good move. Hopefully, it should be out very soon. But what is concerning the sector is that there's no standard bidding documents. There's only standard bidding guidelines. So when there is no standard bidding documents, the chances of discoms maneuvering the bid increases. So you see that why when the private discoms are conducting the bids, most of the time they are the only ones who are bidding in that. The participation level is very less because they are building artificial hurdles in those bids, and which is leading to some kind of bias. And just because the standard bidding documents are not there and guidelines have a wider kind of interpretation on many things, so they are able to maneuver this whole process. So we need to immediately stop it. Otherwise, the way the privatization is increasing in India, a lot of discoms will start using these bidding guidelines to their advantage. They may even also get the local regulators approval to make those changes. So something has to be done so that this whole process of conducting the bidding by the private distribution licensees is fair enough for people like us. So the whole list goes on, Ramesh, but yeah, these are the larger points that I wanted to make.
Thank you, Parag. Thank you. Wonderful talking to you. It was a very good clarity we got from you from many of the developer perspective. So thank you very much. And we are also trying to prepare some of the representation to the government for the next budget advice. So we will come back to you for any other inputs required. So of course, we'll try to include the points which you have mentioned here. We'll try to include, and we'll send our appeal to the next union budget. So thank you very much. Thank you all friends who have joined here for this today discussions. It was wonderful to have all of you here. Thank you very much. Thanks,
Thanks
Parag.
a lot. Thanks, Ramesh.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.